All right, Terry. Thanks for coming on. Have a good night. We'll chat at you later. And we'll be like, Joe, we got to record the next episode. What are we talking about? We just finished recording with Terry. No, Joe. It's been 2 weeks. Come on. Welcome back to the Aviation RC Noob Podcast. You found us. My name is Joe.
And I'm Matt.
We're here to be with you along your journey and to share our experiences in RC aviation. If you have any questions, thoughts, or want to share a flight story, hit us up at aviationrcnoob@gmail.com. Now, buckle in. Let's take off. All right, and we are back. Welcome back, everybody, to episode 36. Today, we're going to be talking about a couple public service announcements and then some podcasts that Matthew and I talk about. The public service announcements, basically, last year for Halloween, Matthew, you and I did a Halloween special where we shared scary stories and such. Yeah, it's hard to believe it's been a year already since that.
I know, right? It feels like yesterday.
A little bit, because after last episode, even last year, for our last Halloween episode, I had just grandiose ideas about, I want to have the spooky story and all these, reverb effects and this, just from an editing standpoint that I wanted to do.
Soundtracks. There were going to be monsters showing up. It was going to be great.
Oh, yeah, it was going to be pyrotechnics. You guys wouldn't have seen it, but they were going to be there.
Oh, my God, that was going to be amazing.
And then, of course, so as I've had a year, and I was like, okay, I got a year to do something awesome for the next Halloween. And it's been a year already. And not only, it seems like we just wrapped up our conversation with Terry, and now here we are 2 weeks later.
Right.
Where did the last 2 weeks go?
We got distracted with the rest of life, pretty much. It's been busy. This time of year is always busy, man. Right before October, this is when new festivals come out and then all the farms open up and say, come check out our corn mazes and all the other junk. And then, it's just the weather turns nice where you can just be outside. You don't have to dress special. You just go and it's beautiful, at least here in the Carolinas.
And that actually reminds me, I think we've got a local horror trail or some scare trail or something I've never been to, but
go this week. Just go.
I can't go this week, but when I get back from being out of town, I think I might see if Rachel wants to go. Anyway.
Yeah, do it.
Getting back to it. So yeah, in a little bit, we're going to talk about a couple scary things that happened over the year, mostly Matthew's side, and then we're going to talk about some podcasts that we listen to, sort of as a what else is out there. Because especially after having Terry on, we figured it might be a good idea just to discuss what other podcasts we listen to. Some of you guys will be aware of some of them, maybe not. And if you're not, feel free to go check them out. But before we get into all that, we're going to talk about our fly stories. And then Matthew, you've picked up my slack where I didn't have a plane ready for this week to discuss. So you'll be covering that.
Yeah, you'll be doing the next 5.
Just
get them lined up.
Yep.
No, but honestly, Joe has had a lot of really exciting things happen this week that he'll probably talk about some later time, but it's definitely had him preoccupied. So I don't mind it. It's all good things. So I've got a little Frakenplane in mind we'll talk about in a minute. But before we do that, I guess we should talk about what we've done since we talked last, right?
So mine, per usual, is really quick. In fact, before we sat down, just a little while ago to start recording, I was in the garage. I said, I have got to get something done. And I think before last episode, I had gotten the tail glued back together with the Fogey. I just haven't put it in the air like I wanted to. But before we sat down to record tonight, I went out there and I currently have the wing of the Sea Duck being glued back on.
Okay.
It was, I say currently being because I'm using foam tack, or I'm using tacky glue as opposed to trying to hot glue it. just because there was so much surface, my hot glue gun gets hot enough that it melts the foam. I wasn't confident enough. Like the benefit of the tack glue is that I'll be able to place it and change the position and get it just right, and before it sets and cures, like I've got some time. So I had to pull the servo lead back out of the wing spar, or the wing channel, because fortunately the servo wire wasn't long enough to go from servo to receiver, so it just pulled loose of itself inside the wing. I had to fish hook a wire to reach.
That's a blessing and a curse right there.
Yeah, I had to fish hook a wire to go in there and pull the servo extension out, so I hooked the wing back up and then got the foam tack put on there and stacked a couple pieces a foam board that I just cut off with scissors, so I could stack a couple layers up so the wing, its pontoon, could sit on that to hold the wing up pretty much level and in line with the plane. Right.
It sets up right.
Right. And there's actually there's a screwdriver on the other wing to keep the plane like rocked at the right angle for the other wing to now this wing to set up. So it's because it kept wanting to like tilt inward towards that wing. I didn't want a dihedral as much as possible. And then I've got to wait on the nose of the duck to kind of pull the nose down so it's sitting right. So I mean, definitely some like whatever I could manage to get this plane kind of.
I'm surprised there's not a bungee cord or two on there too.
I wouldn't trust it with foam board, but yeah, I mean it is definitely a garage rig to be sure.
No, but that's okay though. You got it lined up and it's gluing, and you it's in a spot where you can just let it be so it sets properly.
Yeah, and I mean that foam tack takes how long to tack off and then to actually fully cure?
It's about 5 minutes to tack off, where you can pretty much just let go. And then I think it's pretty much ready to go in about an hour. You want full cure in 24 hours, but you can start handling it pretty quickly.
Okay, so I'm not worried about like opening the garage door up and like a breeze maybe come in and rock the plane. Like that's going to throw my wing off in the morning when we're heading to work.
No, it shouldn't.
Okay. As long as it doesn't blow the plane off the table, we'll be good.
I mean, I was building and I basically held it for about 5 minutes. And at that point, it would hold long enough for me to move to the next stuff. And then at that point, as long as I wasn't trying to like throw it around and smack it into things, I was fine.
All right.
Yeah, good.
Well, that's been me.
Well, I'm glad you did that. No, that's just because I want you to get well, one, because of what I've repaired. But I want to see you fly that Sea Duck, man. I'm excited.
Me too. I want to fly it for more than take off, turn it around, and smack it straight into a tree. Like,
and we will. Honestly, we're going to do that pretty soon. I know. Yeah. I've got my mother's coming into town in a little while now, and that might free me up to be able to come down and take a visit. So we might be able to get together real soon. We'll see.
Well, good.
All right. Well, I guess that brings it to me, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to go through it pretty quick. There's a lot of little things. I think is pretty much what it's going to come down to.
All right.
I've been working on the build video for the Prandtl D, and I've gotten all the way through it. Except I think I'm missing, I think the battery cut near the very end where I'm putting the dihedral into the wing. So I need to pull it back out and do a quick, maybe 3 or 4 minute segment, and just going to close out the video.
Okay.
And hopefully I'll be able to finish that up real soon and get that out. I worked on the quickie. I put in the electronics, and I think the night I was sitting down, I squirreled so bad. It's really awful. But basically, I think I got 3 out of the 4 servos set up. All the control horns, all the control wire, and all the stuff. Everything's ready. And then I ran out of wire. I was like, oh, it's upstairs. And so I went upstairs, and by the time I came back down, I forgot I was even working on the quickie. So I think I've got 1 more control wire, and then I'll be able to get it. I'll be able to situate some battery and give it its maiden flight. So that I'm hoping to be able to do that this coming week or so. Although we're going to fall back, which means we're going to kind of run out of. I'll have to do it in the morning or something like that.
We lose an hour when that happens.
Exactly, which means we get more daylight in the morning, which is awesome if you work outside. But if you're like me, the only thing I get to do that's personal is after work, and that's at 5, and that'll mean it'll be dark. So it's like either I put lights on the quickie and fly it that way, which is probably a big mistake. Anyway, so I'm hoping to get that maiden before the time switches. In America, I don't know why we do it, but we just do. Let's see, the Texan. I flew the Texan a little bit more, and that was another, again, just rock solid. The Hangar RC's T6 Texan, it just flies great. I don't have to think about it, really. It just put a battery in and go, ooh, this will be fun. And I go and have fun. That's awesome.
Oh, good.
Yeah. Let's see. I also need to bring the Prandtl D out for a ride, so I can get a little bit of footage of that. And then, the P61 Black Widow. I started rolling up the tail sections because I knew I'd have to tape them and leave them. And I know once I start building, I'm going to want to try to get all those booms together. I'm going to want to do it in like a night.
Now, the Black Widow was that was one of the planes that Steve and Jack had done?
Exactly.
Okay.
It is Steve and Jack's P61 Black Widow. It's awesome. It's awesome. I'm looking forward to it. It
looks really good.
Yeah. Hey, if you can get somebody to laser cut it, do that. There are a handful of pieces that are very delicate, and that the distance between the outer circle wall and the internal part where the box, where the main spar of the fuse or boom sits, it's really thin. So it's not like you couldn't deal with it anyway, but if it's laser cut, it's just nice. So
nice.
I had a friend of mine who actually, shout out to Kilroy07, who was listening to that episode with the Nisgodas, and he, I guess, just heard that I was interested in building it, and I printed out plans, and he said, I'll show him. And so he apparently had already put together cut files, so he cut me out a set for the P61 and sent it.
Nice.
Which is awesome, yeah. And and then I called him up to thank him, and we sat and talked for, geez, gosh, it must have been like 4 hours. It was awesome. It was great. It's just good to catch up with good buddies. So, and then I repaired. I'm going to go through a list. I'm not going to go into like what I did. Most of these were very small repairs, with probably the exception of the Taylor Aero car and where is it? The Bandito. But basically, I repaired my spear that I've had forever and really haven't been flying. And I was like, why did I not fly this? Oh, it's this. It's a control arm, or a little servo got loose. Literally, that's all it was. The Silvera needed some big repairs, but it was also able to make an upgrade because I put a windshield in it. So now I can put some FPV behind the windshield and fly it from the cockpit. I actually took that out today and gave it a remaiden flight just to give it a go. And I think there's something that's a little off. I've got to kind of change maybe control linkage lengths and stuff. Maybe something shifted while I was sitting there and getting banged around a bit. But it got back up in the air. So I was able to fly that around a handful of laps. And again, it's a trainer plane. So it's like a 2-seater trainer. It's a great flyer. Just a lot of fun. Even with it being off, kind of had to hold the sticks over to the side a little bit. It was still easy to fly. So it was a good time. I think I might have some videos. So if you are subscribed to my YouTube channel, you may see it show up. The Taylor Aero car, I pulled out the old barbecue skewers and put in some metal axles. So,
okay.
So now that when I landed, I won't break the skewer, and I can actually and what I'm going to do is also put in bigger wheels so I can take off from the grass at the field. I repaired the Don Carnage landing gear and got that all ready to go. I also have the bigger motor and a 12x6 prop So I should have plenty of oomph to get it up into the air. So I'm looking forward to getting that back out. A friend of mine built, I'm trying to think of the maker. It's a Starship. I think it's Beechcraft Starship. It's basically a twin pusher. It almost looks like the Long Easy, like a Burt Rutan's Long Easy with a canard and like kind of almost like an arrow with like a commuter jet. But with the twin pusher prop.
All right.
It's awesome looking. And it's one of those things. Oh, look, the firewall was loose. And I think it needed a control arm. That was it. Flying Louver I took out and made a couple quick repairs to that. The X-Jet Outlaw needed a couple quick things. I got that all repaired. So that's ready to go. Again, all of these things took about like 3 minutes. The Spitfire, the holes where the barbecue skewers go have gotten much bigger.
Yeah.
And so it's time to put in some reinforcements and close up them holes. So that's what I went and did a little bit of. And I think I might have missed one. So I have to go back and just check it once more before I finish. Send it back up again. The Dollar Tree foam board Reptile Dragon is a little bit of repair, and I'm still working on trying to troubleshoot. One of the motors kept intermittently cutting in and out, and I didn't know why, and I really can't go hog wild on that until that's figured out.
Right.
But it's on the bench and being worked on. I took care of a lot of the minor stuff, so now I'm just dealing with the motor. Once the motor is all set, that'll be back in the air. Tomukian cargo ship that I've had it's an anime plane from Nausica, the Valley of the Wind. It's pretty small scale, like a small 20-inch, 30-inch plane. I started putting in servo spots and double checking the spar, and I'm going to start putting in control horns and control rods. So that should be ready to go in a little bit. The Bandito was fully repaired and ready for a remaiden. And I brought out old Tony the Explorer. I
am really surprised that plane is still around.
I know. Well, I did a lot of work to it. So it's basically an FT Explorer. It has I replaced the spar with a wooden spar because it folded on me. Much like anybody who built the Explorer, just like it shows in the flight test plans and stuff.
Right.
Just put a 1/4 inch or 1/8 inch by 1/8 inch dowel that runs out 24 inches or something, and you'll be set. I taped mine up to look like Tony the Tiger from the cereal box. And it's awesome. Anyway, so I realized that the wingtip was, it must have done a cartwheel or something like that. And I I repaired and strengthened up some weak spots and closed up some of the mushed parts, like where it maybe took a hard landing. So I got that back up and I flew it out today. Matter of fact, I took it out and flew it around, and it was a good time to fly it around.
Nice.
I think the power system's a little underpowered. Oh, I know why. I've got a 3-cell lithium ion battery. So it doesn't quite have it doesn't spit out a lot of amps. So it'll go for a long time, but you're not going to get a lot of pickup out of it. So it's kind of like a long, steady go.
Yeah, I hadn't really thought about it. I guess so long as the cell voltage is still the same and the connector's the same, I guess we could fly.
Yeah, there's still the same voltage. So each cell is still 3.7. But the problem is that the limitation is the C rating. So where lithium polymers tend to have like a 25 to 100 C, right? These have like 1 to 5 C.
Oh, wow.
So it's much less, it's very limited on the amp draw. So if you have a really efficient motor that draws maybe 10 or 8 amps, you can do that with the lithium ions. And so that's kind of where I think I'm at the edge of that. But I got it up and was flying around having a good time. Actually, I started losing it in the haze kind of darkening clouds as the sky was, as the sun had already gone down past the horizon. I'm like, okay, I have an orange on a dark blue, which when they both gray out, they grow out to the same gray tone. And I realized, I'm like, I need to bring this in before I lose it. But I did get out to fly, and it was a lot of fun to fly. So, and so that covers what I flew, because I only flew those 2 planes. But I did get some quality time on the bench, and just kind of, what I was trying to do was figure out, like, what are all these planes doing here? And should I get rid of them, or are they worth repairing? And when I looked at them, I'm like, oh my God, each one of these is about a 5 or 10 minute repair. So I started chugging through them. Well, that's it.
Okay.
Let's see. I don't know. Full scale pilot training is, I had some wisdom teeth pulled out. So most of that's been kind of on hold, as I didn't want to go into the air on drugs.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
It's only the prudent thing to do as a pilot. And then I was in some sort of achy pain, and I wasn't sure how altitude would affect it. Plus, I was really busy this last week. So sadly, there hasn't been too much on this front, but I need to get back into it. Otherwise, I'm going to start losing it. Oh, I did start taking the solo written test. So I'm working on that.
Nice.
Yeah. I think that brings us down to our listener comments.
Okay. So what you got?
Well, I finally got out to Apple Podcast comments. I was like, oh, this is where they store all those.
Yeah.
So, and I know we ask all you listeners to go out to Apple Podcast and make a comment in either your local aggregator. That's what I was trying to say. Or go to Apple directly and make a comment, because when people go to look for podcasts, they oftentimes read the comments to see, is this the kind of podcast I want to listen to? So when you guys make comments and 5-star reviews, people go, oh my gosh, this is a podcast I should probably put in my list. So I want to thank all the listeners who've gone out and done that already. And I'm going to read a couple. Some of them might be old, so I'm sorry, because it's been a while since I've looked. So the Hangar RC, back in September of last year, he said, this is the best podcast for a noob and seasoned pilots alike. If you're new to the world of RC flight, this is the podcast that you need to listen to. Matt and Joe have such amazing chemistry. They're entertaining, informative, and all around fun podcast to listen to. It's awesome to listen to their RC adventures, or their adventures in RC, as they tackle different airframes, build techniques, and just flat out have fun messing around at their local airfields. Their stories are captivating and always have me on the edge of my seat, laughing and waiting for the next episode. If you're even remotely interested in the hobby, you should listen to these guys. Keep up the good work, guys. And thanks again, Sam. We appreciate that.
Thanks, Sam. And that was shortly after we had him on originally.
Yeah, I think so. Yep. Yeah, we need to get him back on. I heard he's got some things brewing. See what he's up to. Anyway, that's a side note. We had UAV Pilot 107 reach out at the beginning of this month, a couple weeks ago. It says, brilliant podcast for the RC aviation enthusiast. Each other week, Matt and Joe chat about their exploits in building, flying, and even designing RC planes, which is both informative and entertaining. Also, they often have guests from the community, including one that now heads a lab at NASA! Exclamation
point. Good old
Red. Yeah, good old Red. Thanks, Red. We got to get, he's another person I want to get back on. He finished the Reno Air Races. And I want to have him talk to us about what that's like to be involved and what his role is. And I know he's been building a plane, which I'm acutely interested in, because that is one of the avenues of owning a plane. Not that that's necessarily for me, but it's definitely something of great interest to me. Plus, I know February's coming around. That's when I do all my STEM stuff with the Scouts. And I'd like to talk to him about, he has a strong passion for education, STEM, and bringing RC as part of that. So I definitely want to talk to him a little bit about that too. So I think having him on soon, don't be surprised. Okay.
Sounds good.
Almost Not a Noob. A really good name. Excellent for a noob, not so noob. Did I read that right? Excellent for a noob and not so noob. Yeah, that's right.
There you go.
These guys are great. They have great stories to share. I really like that they're humble enough to share their missteps and how to fix them. Matt and Joe make me want to get out and fly more, which is awesome. That's cool.
So it's sort of the objective, behind all this, just sharing the mistakes so that, you guys can enjoy it and laugh along with us, but also learn from them. And yeah.
And get you out and fly. Seriously. That was why we talk about it, is because I remember listening to other podcasts, and we'll get to that in a second. And it was those fly stories that made me think, I need to go get my plane out to the field and fly some. I forgot how much fun that is.
The flip side and the downside is I feel like I haven't flown hardly any this year. So
you've been very busy. There've been a lot of things going on.
Everybody's been busy.
Yeah.
2022.
Yeah, I've had my moments where I've been doing jack, and it's been awesome. And part of that, I indulged the RC hobby pretty fully. But, well, that's the other thing, is we haven't really gotten together a whole lot. We normally get together like once a month.
Yeah, that's true.
And we just haven't been able to do that a whole lot. So that's all right. All right. So, and our last comment that I have here, actually our second to last comment, is from Fellow Noob, and that was back in June of 2020. So again, sorry it's been so late.
That was the first review we got on iTunes.
Yeah, so this is probably a repeat, but it says episode 4. Matt and Joe have such a great chemistry. It's easy to spend time listening and learning about RC planes, and the crashes and the flying stories always have me laughing. And it says, I can't wait for more. So that was awesome.
Yeah, I'm glad other people can laugh along with us again, because, sometimes you get into such situations, you're like, the only thing you can do is laugh, otherwise you're going to cry about it. And sometimes you do both.
Yeah, I find myself doing both more often than if I'm not crying, I'm cursing at the ground, because it keeps coming up to meet my planes, and I don't understand it. I told them they're not allowed to hang out. All right. And then I think last but not least, we recently, again, at the beginning of the month, we received an email in our email accounts, Joe at aviationrcnoob.com and Matthew at aviationrcnoob.com, just in case.
Yeah, look at you.
I know, look at that. I figured I'll do it while I can. And it says, it's from Richard Joy. It says, hello, Joe and Matt. I just wanted to thank you both for your recent podcast episode and addressing the art of trimming a plane. I'm sure others will find it very informative, especially those new to the hobby. Prior to installing an Aura, I often crash my planes on their maiden flights, but the Aura's level assist mode seems to keep the plane level even if the plane has not been trimmed, and so it allows me to gain that critical 3 mistakes high altitude before switching off level assist and attempting to trim the plane. I'll try that OpenTX instant trim mode, but first I'm going to exchange the 2 position switches on my transmitter, so the momentary switch is on the left, as suggested by Chris. This allows the right hand to hold the trim on the right stick and the left hand to perform the instant trim. As I have an Aura, I will not transfer the main trims to the transmitter sub-trim, but will transfer them to the Aura as it stores the trims, and then the transmitter trims can be reset to their center positions. I really like that the Aura holds not only the trims, but also the rates and the expos, as it allows me to create one reference model on my transmitter and simply copy it for each plane. Cheers, Richard.
Well, one day when I pull mine out and start working with it, I'll have to tie back to that email so I can know some hurdles or some things to be aware of. Because he was talking about it storing trim and storing expos and all that, and I didn't know it was doing that.
Yeah, I didn't know that either. That's actually really good information, or it's information worth looking into if you get one of those boards. Yeah, looking at how it does that kind of thing will affect how you set up your transmitter. And those are excellent ideas on how to make sure that you're getting what you want while you're flying, right? Knowing that, hey, I'm doing most of my trimming with my right hand. I probably want my left hand to be doing the instant trim stuff, and the only way to do that is to move the switches around. So, yeah. So thank you so much, Richard, for bringing in. I know Joe and I are probably we'll be sending him a detailed response, but I felt we should share that. And I want to thank you guys, you listeners, for reaching out and letting us know what you're thinking with the podcast and how we're doing. And if you have anything you'd like us to cover, any ideas of topics you'd like to know more about, or guests you'd like to hear from, reach out to those emails I just mentioned and let us know, man. We'd like to hear. I think that.
And continuing on, we had a sim night this past Friday night.
Mm-hmm.
So normally we would do a build night on a Friday night, but we decided to change things up and try something, and we did a simulator night with Phoenix RC. So we had a couple guys come out, Devin and Richard. Thanks for coming out.
Yeah, thanks.
Flying with us.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun too.
It was. There was some. The technical curve was steeper than I recall. Trying to get that set up and running.
Yeah. Well, and thank you. And that was actually part of why we did it. We really wanted to see one, help you listeners who are interested in getting into there and are having hard times. We want you to get in there. And obviously we want to figure out what we can and can't do together as a group, because we noticed there was a couple things, like each person had to have the same plane in their stash for everybody to see it while they're flying. So it was little things like that. And it makes sense. It's not that it's hard. And then so that kind of leaves us scratching our heads on how we want to make sure, if you come to the sim night, that we have all the planes we want to fly. Right.
Right. And so it might be that we, host the files so we can easily kick a link and say, if for a future sim night, make sure you have these downloaded and set up, and if you need some help, reach out to us on how to get those installed before the night, so that when we're all in there flying, everybody's got the same reference planes. Because if you're flying a plane that nobody else has, or some people have and some don't, those that don't have, we just don't see you.
Yeah.
And we were encountering some of that, and we're toying with, it's like, well, let's try this. Do you see me now? And it's like you're not even showing up, period. But you could still see me.
Everybody else.
You were flying a plane I didn't have, but you could still see me because you still had the plane installed that I was flying. It's
and so that was part of what we want to do. It was as much a learning thing as hopefully to get those who are interested in simming on board and having fun with it. So and again, I know a lot of people mentioned that the different sims that they fly. And I just wanted to reiterate that we chose Phoenix 6 because it is free. It's free to download. It's free to use. They have the 6.0 allows everybody to get together, and it's not a whole lot different than Real Flight. As a matter of fact, I think Richard was saying I was going to buy this other sim, but because I thought Phoenix would be, because it's freeware or it's abandonware, that it's really not so good. But this is as good as anything I've ever seen. I don't think I'm going to be purchasing that right away. I'm gonna check this out for a little bit, and we chose that because if you're new to the hobby, you're probably on a tight budget, especially if you're looking at flight test stuff. You are going to be looking at the sims, going, wait, I have a choice between buying a plane or buying a sim. That's going to be a tough choice. Let's not make it a choice. Get the sim. Learn from that as you build the next plane. And if you want a different sim later, then go ahead. But at least it gets everybody in and started. So that was kind of our point of selecting that. So we'll be doing one next month. Probably we'll have to figure out exactly when, and we'll make a...
Yeah, let's not throw a date on that one yet. We need to...
No, there's too many holidays and events coming up at the end of next month. So yeah, we will be posting that very soon. We will definitely hear about it in the next episode. So listen in and stay tuned. I think that's it on Sim Nights. Do we have anything else for the Sims?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I'll say this one because I do some looking. So as a PSA for anybody who tries to get tries to do the Phoenix RC thing, and so I have to run my transmitter through an emulator for the game to recognize. It's not just quite so plug and play. I gotta run an emulator, which is on the Phoenix RC page. But one of our guys was having trouble with the emulator not seeing his transmitter.
Mm-hmm.
And what it ultimately boiled down to was, like, earlier this year, sometime last year, there was a Windows update that came out that for his transmitter, I forget which transmitter, he was running one of the FR Sky transmitters. It changed the driver that Windows uses, the software Windows uses to recognize and use that as a USB connected device. So there was some technical where we had to go in and change the driver that Windows was looking at for that. So if you happen to encounter that where the emulator's not seeing your transmitter, look into how to change that driver, because that's ultimately what we had to do. I don't want to go too deep into it, and I don't remember all the steps, but I remember finding a thread on that walked us through the process.
Okay. And if you're on our Discord, you can always just kind of shout out about needing help with that. And I'm sure either Joe or I or somebody else who's also been through those steps can help you through it. If you aren't on the Discord, it's not a bad thing to go do. It's basically all the people who listen to this podcast are on there, and some people who don't even listen a whole lot, but they're part of the same community where we like to build and fly and laugh and have a good time. So join in. We have a link at the bottom of most of our episode show notes. We'll have one here most likely. Take a look and join in. We'd love to see you there and join in the conversations.
So you're picking up some slack this week from me.
Yeah, I guess I will.
I appreciate that.
No worries.
What are you talking about tonight?
Well, in honor of Halloween being basically tomorrow, when this is going to be released, I will choose a Frakenplane.
Ooh.
Well, basically, it looks like just a bunch of stuff kind of thrown together. And admittedly, it's not the best version of that, but it was something that I was listening to one of the podcasts we'll be mentioning in a little bit, Terry Dunn's podcast. And one of the guys on there, Lee Ray, said he had picked up a fiberglass fuselaged version of this plane, and it is called it's a roadable plane, which is basically a flying car, and it's the Waldo's Waterman's Aerobile, or Aerobile. And it's spelled like arrows and bow and arrow. And then later they spelled it like an aeroplane arrow.
All right.
So you can look it up either way. And basically it was in the 1935. And I think he had his original idea even before World War I. But in 1935, he basically made Waldo Waterman he basically made a submission to have a government-funded VDOL safety airplane competition. So he made this submission, and it's basically like a little, almost like a smart car, like a three-wheeled smart car, if you want to use today's standards, with a propeller sticking out the back, and add that to a swept wing, almost like a glider wing, like a hang glider.
That's what it looks like.
Actually reminds me a lot of the Burgess Dunn 3, which was, that was completed in I think 1916 or 1917 or something. So it's used just like a single swept wing with rudders, basically drag rudders on the ends of the wings, and there's little struts coming down, kind of like a trainer plane, down to the bottom of the little pod. And the pod, basically, you could take off the wings when you landed, and actually the struts would kind of fall down to the ground, and then they had little pegs sticking on the ends, and you could basically kind of set it up and drive away, and leave it at the airport, and then you could basically back into it and then hook up, like bolt down the wings again and hook up the struts, and off you fly.
All right, I think I'm tracking.
Okay. And in the show notes, Joe, are some pictures. And we'll have some links in the show notes so you could go and find this vehicle for yourself. And it basically, there were only 6 ever made, right? And every time they made it, they either updated like the motor, or they changed maybe the way the flaps worked, or I think they went from regular flaps to slotted flaps. Then they had instead of having the struts, they got rid of the struts and made a cantilevered wing spar. And then I think the 5th version was a 3-seater. So they basically just, and by the end of 1941, they'd pretty much gone through about 5 or 6 iterations. And that was pretty much it. There are not very many, and there's only one hanging in the Smithsonian, so that you can go and see it if you're in DC and want to go to the Flight Museum. It's in there somewhere.
So do they just not know where the other 5 are, or they've been dismantled by this point?
Yeah, most of them have been destroyed. I don't know if there's any more than that one in existence, honestly.
Okay.
The literature that I've read so far is pretty sparse in general. This is not a craft that most people even know about, care about, or think about. But I do, because I've been on this kick of building aero cars, car planes, apparently plane mobiles, or whatever you want to call it. So this is definitely one of those ones where I'm going to be making plans of this, and I'm going to be making one.
Nice.
Definitely. Anyway, so it seated most of the versions seated 2 people. It was about 20 feet long, and it was about 40 feet or 38 feet in wingspan. Its empty weight was 2,000 pounds, or just shy of 2,000, and its gross weight was 2,500, which is pretty typical for most 2-seaters. It's actually a little on the heavy side, but that was also because they were using a Studebaker Waterman 6-cylinder inline water-cooled car engine. So they weren't using like an aluminum block airplane engine to run this. And they basically had like a clutch set up where you could power the propeller, or you could power the rear wheels.
Okay. I wonder if there's like a belt and pulley system that clutch was tied into, or if it was a full-blown transmission that you were disengaging and re-engaging another one.
I feel like it's a gear transmission, but honestly, what I saw from the pictures, and I tried to find that because I was curious myself. I was unable to find it, and again, the literature is pretty sparse. It's a 100 horsepower engine, which is kind of in line with most light sport planes today. Right. And honestly, this size and shape and weights and all that stuff are pretty close. Let's see, max speed was 100 knots. Or 120 miles an hour. The cruise speed was about 100 miles an hour, which, again, that's pretty typical of a 2-seater light plane. The landing speed was 45 miles an hour. It basically, on the road, it would go about 55, 60 miles an hour, and in the air, it would go about 100.
Plus, you could fly it away the crow.
That's it. Let's see. Rate of climb was 600 feet a minute. And it could go about 350 miles, which that's a pretty typical distance for most 2-seater airplanes that are of that general size. So it really wasn't, I'm sure it was probably a very rough car to drive.
Oh, for sure.
And I'm pretty sure it was, but I imagine it was a pretty serviceable airplane. But if you look at the automobile magazines, it's in the top 50 worst cars ever. So
okay,
it was one of the things that kind of stood out. I thought it was pretty funny. Well, anyway, so go to the link, check out this plane. It's pretty interesting. When I start talking about it, don't be surprised if I throw out a link to you can build your own foam board version of it. I think that's about it. I think we're on to that's about all we need to know about it.
Okay.
Oh, I know what it was. That's what's interesting. The rudders and the aileron controls were coupled. So much like the air coupe. And so what you do is you turn the steering wheel to yaw. You'd kind of roll and yaw at the same time as a coordinated turn, which is actually really great for flying, makes it very intuitive. However, as I understand, the ground handling gets a little weird because people are used to using the rudder to do the ground handling, and you actually are coupling in some ailerons on the ground.
Well, it also doesn't help you in a cross breeze.
Exactly. Yeah. And so ground control can be a little bit more difficult with that kind of plane. So that's one of the complaints of the air coupe. I'm sure it was a complaint of this. But there's only 5, so only 5 people were complaining. Didn't get too many people. Didn't get too much attention, I don't think. But that's okay. It's an interesting little Frakenplane. All right. So I guess that brings us on to the next segment here.
Yeah, you've got what, a couple short stories for scary stories, some little scares you had over the last year.
Yeah, definitely a couple scares over the last year. I mean, we can talk about the general scare of having your X-Acto knife roll off the desk onto your foot. That didn't actually happen to me, but I've had it roll off and go knife down. And that's so remember, put the blade into either its keeper or into like a square piece of foam board so that it won't roll. You'll be happier for it.
And there's also the occasional scare of, walk out of the garage and realize, oh God, I left the hot glue gun running all night.
Yeah, I know. You're like, what's that smell? Oh man, that's hot glue. Dang it.
Yeah, that smells like hot glue.
I left that on all night. Oh, stupid me. And both of these stories kind of come down to the same problem, but we'll talk about the one where I cut up my finger really bad, and actually it's healed up really well.
Yeah, I hadn't asked you about that recently. How's it doing?
I don't know if you can see, but it's
a little scarred up.
Yeah, a little scarred up, but generally it's doing really well. I don't notice any reduction in mobility, but basically I was working on a plane and I plugged it in. And I turned the throttle down to 0, which was reversed because of the way it was set up in the ESC. So it was reading 100, but then I kicked the power off or the failsafe, but it failsafes to 0, which for that ESC said, okay, full throttle, let's go. And off the plane took at me while I was sitting working on it.
Okay, so that I understand, the ESC was programmed in reverse.
Correct.
So 0 throttle was 100. 100 would have been 0. So if you'd had at full throttle, it was sat still.
Exactly.
But because even though you had it at 0
the transmitter,
throttle, it didn't do anything, right? Because the ESC's failsafe was to be in nothing, like to not be running.
Well, it was a transmitter. No. The transmitter would transmit out 0 when it was turned off.
Okay.
So if it powered off, it would send, okay, we're back at 0 again. And then it would cut off, and then it would just basically the whole plane came to life because the last thing it was told to do was go to zero, which is 100% propeller speed.
Right, on that ESC.
On the ESC.
So you were aware of the reversed ESC. You had your throttle turned all the way up.
Right. And I again, everything was fine. That the controls were working exactly as they should on the controls, but I knew the ESC was backwards. What I forgot was that there was a failsafe set to go to 0.
Okay, when you turned it off.
And when I turned it off,
okay.
It kicked on everything. I
understand how this happened.
And I turned off the transmitter before unplugging the battery. So, word to the wise, unplug your battery and then turn the transmitter off.
So what ended up happening, Matthew?
Well, it came right at me. I threw my hands in the way and tried to bat it down to the ground. I think I kicked it up in the air or whatever I did. I tried to get it the heck anywhere but at my face, which is where it was coming. And so it ate through my finger a little bit. Bit down from basically the knuckle. And it was just a little burp. And it was done in a split second. It was still going on the ground, but I was out of harm's way. 1, 2, 3 deep cuts pretty much to the bone. on the side of one of my fingers. And
I remember being on Discord with you that night when that happened.
Yeah. And I just wrapped the crap out of it and held it. And, it was just, essentially 3 flaps of skin kind of in the breeze, and try to put it back in place, let blood, blood do what blood does, and kind of reconnect everything and let it heal itself back up. Probably should have gotten stitches, but the bleeding did stop. So,
but we're hard-headed, so
I'm an idiot. Yeah, I don't do that. I'm like, it'll be all right. It doesn't matter. Yeah. So anyway,
rub a little dirt on it, it'll be fine.
Pretty much. I didn't have any dirt inside the house, so I just like, I'll just go to the sink. Anyway, yeah. So that was the first scare, and I think I had the same motor set up, and the throttle was reversed once again, and I was flying the Merlin, or the magician. Sorry, the sorcerer and the balsa kit. I've renamed it as the Dollar Tree as a magician. That's a big 8-foot plane that I tried to get going just recently. And I had set it all up. And again, all the controls were working fine. And I think I did the same thing again. Oh, no, wait, I went to go power it on, plugged in the battery, and I couldn't remember. Is this the ESC that's backwards? So
you rolled the dice and
failed. I mean, so I was thinking that. And so because of that, I moved out of the way of the front of the plane. I had it facing away from everybody, but I plugged it in, and it, sure enough, turned to life, went full throttle, because that's what 0 is for that ESC. And off the plane went into the stand next to me. And there was a gentleman who was working on it. Like, he had planes over there, but he was nowhere nearby, thankfully, at the time. I just knew that, like, I was just had that sixth sense, like, this might go sideways. Let me move over here, And then I did it, and off it, again, off it went. And it chicken danced itself to oblivion. The motor came off the firewall. The prop was gone. I had some repairs to do to the fuse, that kind of stuff. And there was a little bit of damage to the wing. More importantly, nobody got hurt. But it could easily have been another one of the same situations. So I'm about to figure out what that ESC is and either throw it out or figure out how to fix it, because that's really just been dangerous.
Yeah.
So all I can suggest is make sure all your ESCs are going the same direction.
And I mean, really, if you find one that's doing that, or you find one that's handling in a way that it shouldn't, or that you wouldn't expect it to, either stop there and address it, or tag it somehow to say, these are the characteristics this is exhibiting, so that if you're not going to address it, then you can then pick it up later. You're like, okay, this was giving me trouble.
Right. Yeah. Or even write on it in permanent marker or something. You can put a sticker over it if you need to later. Pull it out of the darn plane. Get it out of circulation so it doesn't surprise you again. But yeah, that was scary. Those were 2 very scary moments.
Yeah.
Yeah. So don't do like I do. Make sure your ESCs are going right, and do like Joe suggested. Get it out of service if it is, and you haven't been able to figure it out right away. And I mean, always go behind wherever the propeller's going to take the plane. Don't be right in front of it.
Do as we say, not as we do.
Take off your props.
All right. So moving on to the main topic for this episode, then we want to take a little bit to talk about some of the podcasts that we listen to. Again, so that if there's any of these that you guys are not aware of, feel free to go and check them out. So I'll just kind of go down the list of podcasts I listen to or have listened to. Let's see. The Serial.
These are the
podcast.
RC. These are radio controlled based, right?
Oh. Fair point. So Scratch Serial, that was an NPR podcast, my bad.
No, I mean, look, if we want to go through all that, we'll be here for a couple of hours.
No, I was playing around, but yeah, there's a couple I've listened to before. They're pretty good. So RC related podcast. Probably the one I listen to the most is RC Plane Lab, which that's Ron and Tom. They do the balsa side of this hobby. And Ron also listens to every one of our episodes. So he and I get to chit chat a bit. I'm actually behind again on their episodes, so I need to get caught up.
Those guys are great. I mean, they have a long history of being in the hobby. I think one of them's been in it for at least 30 years, and the other one's been in it more than 10.
Crank that up another decade or two, yeah.
Well, I was trying to give Tom like the benefit of his, I like Tom. I didn't want to throw him under a bus. But yeah, no, they really have a lot of institutional knowledge. They have been in it a long time. So they're a great resource. And they're fun to listen to. They've got a really good chemistry.
They do. They started up not long after we did, but they were on a weekly schedule there for the longest time. So they got way more content than we got right now.
I don't know how they did it.
Man, I'd run out of things to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
There's also the RC lawn chair pilots. They actually started up not long after us.
Mm-hmm.
Their release schedule is a bit more sporadic, and I just checked. They hadn't had an episode in a while, but I think one of them's got some major life things going on, good things.
Yeah. I think it's they just had one of them just had a baby recently, so he's being a new dad, and they're out in Utah, so they're in like perfect sailing country. They've got a couple like craters that you go, oh, the wind's coming from the other side. Let's turn around, which isn't very common. So they've got some good spots for that. So they talk a lot about they do talk about sailing, gliding, but they do talk about. They're so enthusiastic. It's fun to listen to them.
Mm-hmm.
They're good people. And those are. And you got one more, right?
Yeah, so I've listened to a couple, and by a couple I mean 2 or 3 episodes of the RC After Hours podcast.
Mm-hmm.
That's the one with Andre, right?
Yeah, and they had a bunch of other guys with him for a while, and I think the one was like a motorcycle guy before he got into drones and flying planes, and they had another guy. And they had a really good chemistry, and I used to listen to them a lot. But they kind of, they went for many years and had a lot of great episodes talking to tons of people. And 2 of them are just like, I think I got to move on. Like, I'm not doing this as much. There's not enough time. So, and so Andre continued it, which is great.
Okay. And then one last one I've listened to, probably more of their episodes since After Hours, is Scrap Pile. So RC Scrap Pile, I think.
Yeah, it is.
So I don't. They're a different format, but they can be enjoyable to listen to.
They remind me of if I'm at the field shooting the breeze with the guys at the field. That's what the feeling is with that podcast. Which is a lot of fun. Anything else?
No.
Well, like Joe, I listened to the RC Plane Labs. I listened to the Lawn Chair Pilots and RC After Hours. I also listened to, again, Terry Dunn, Lee Ray, and Fitzwalker do RC Roundtable. And again, we had Terry Dunn last time as a guest talking about his creations, but those guys are also they're a lot of fun to listen to. They rib each other left and right about a very good nature. They used to, I think, all fly at the same field down in Texas. And I think since Terry has moved and it looks like Lee and Fitz still are close enough where they see each other at the field and whatnot, but they are very deep, like Terry. He's very deep in all the things that are RC. They love it. They talk about it. They have other hobbies too, but they are dedicated to just promoting having fun in this hobby. So yeah, go give them a listen. They're a lot of fun. Actually, any one of these here, they're on here because we've listened to them and we've enjoyed it enough where it might be for some of you. Let's see, RC Stuff. That's, I think, a world drone championship winner. I'm blanking on his name, but basically it's powered by Hobby Wing. They talk about RC cars as well as RC planes. And they have a lot of really technical good technical knowledge. I really feel terrible that I'm absolutely missing on the hosts, but
Charlie and Jordan.
Jordan Temkin. Now, Jordan Temkin's the drone racing world champion from a handful of years ago, and Charlie does the Charlie Show. He is employed by Hobbywing, and he does a lot of the technical support. So he gets into the weeds. I mean, you thought we got deep into motors. This guy's like, well, what kind of lag? I mean, they're like tweaking the lag time and the lead time through the ESC on the motors.
Oh, geez.
As well as actually getting feedback and auto adjusting that stuff. Like, I'm telling you, listen to that. You'll learn more than you ever wanted to know about motors and ESCs and all the different ways you can do stuff with that. And part of it is because, when you're doing like drag racing, like RC drag racing and RC truck stuff, when you're doing competition, all those little minutia things make the difference between, if all the pilots are about the same, they make the difference between winning and losing an event. Mm-hmm. So he's deep in it. So he gets all the calls from those guys going, well, can we get better? And so he's like, oh, okay, we'll see what we can do. Freefall RC, they are a helicopter podcast. And okay, so this is a little personal love of mine in that these guys are from New York and New Jersey. Generally, there's one guy, he's from Tennessee. They've actually had a handful of different hosts, but the two that started it are from the New York and New Jersey area. And that's
your
where
old stomping grounds.
That's my old stomping ground. So listening to them is like listening to all my buddies back home.
Right.
So I'm like, oh, I miss this. And they're great. They're great fun. They rib each other left and right. They have a good time with it. They're really out to just have fun and promote helis. And if you want to know anything about helis, as a matter of fact, when we start talking about helis, I'm getting them, one of them or both of them or all of them on to talk about how a new guy can get in and get involved with helis, because it is a different world and it is a lot of fun. Well, they're having a lot of fun with it. So I recommend it. It is not safe for little ears. So just beware that they have adult language. It's for adults. Flight Test Podcast was going strong for a little bit, and then it was sporadic, and then they kind of stopped doing it. And recently they've kind of picked it back up, and they are, I think, releasing on weekly episodes. And they're kind of addressing common questions that people have right now. And I think they're using it as a platform to talk to flight test fans about where the company is going and ideas they have and things like that, to kind of communicate the inner workings and the directional kind of stuff.
Okay.
And the goals, things that they don't really talk about in the podcasts or in their videos or
in the videos. Yeah. Right.
So that's an avenue for that. I think that's what they're using it for. Flight Test Community Cast. Now we're going to get into things that are either not quite currently running, but they're still available and they're great listens. Let's see, Mike Finley, Sean Patrick Murphy, and originally it was Joel, and I'm blanking on his last name. The three of those guys ran the Flight Test Community Cast, and they were actually the first people I heard. They had an interview with Red, and they were talking originally about the Prandtl wing as I was designing my Prandtl wing, which was just like, it was serendipity. I was like, oh my God, this is the best. But they're a great group of guys. They started hosting, the Build Night idea is partly from listening to them. They occasionally would do stuff like that, or they had a guest that would do that with them. It was a lot of fun. They're a great group to listen to. They talk mostly, it used to be, it's a flight test community cast. So obviously it's community members that are fans in the flight test community. And they just got together one year. I think they were at Flight Fest, and they said, we should do a podcast. And I said, yeah, we should. And off it went, And the reason why they kind of slowed down, and hopefully we'll get them on to talk to them, was they just said, look, we're here to give you quality content. Like, we're not going to just put out an episode to put one out. If we don't have material, you're not getting a podcast. Like, it's as much as you might tell us you want to hear our voices, we're just not that awesome. I don't think they put it quite that way, but I mean, it's, and I can sympathize with that. I understand, when Joe and I sit down to put a podcast out, we're like, what value are we giving to our listeners,
Mm-hmm.
And so anyway, they're a great podcast to listen to. They have all their episodes still. They have not necessarily canceled the show. Their one guy, Joel, who used to live in Florida, he said he couldn't keep doing it. He had to do other things. And so Sean and Mike have considered, they're not closing it down, but they definitely have the website up and they have all the episodes hosted and ready for you to download. Go and listen to them. Another one like that is the FPV show. So that's more quadcopters. These guys, again, they're not safe for work, but they are like my childhood buddies and I just shooting the stuff. And and if you want to know about quadcopters and more in the details about how to set up quads and how do you get good at racing? One of them was basically invited to be a finalist at one of the drone races. Like they've got some interesting, but listen to them story like, oh, I lost it on the roof and here I am I'm putting a board against the roof so I can climb and grab the hold of the edge of the school to get on top. And, and he goes, cause I don't want, I'm like, and here I'm thinking, I'm just going to kick out a window by accident. And then I'm going to go to jail. And he's cursing the whole time. He's trying to get this quad down from the roof of the school.
Geez.
I mean, he was just relaying the story and I'm like, oh my God, I think I've been there. Anyway, so they're a lot of fun to listen to. Give them a listen. They may not be for you, but they may be hilarious. I think last I checked, they had all their episodes available still. They're not making new ones. I would love them to, because they're a lot of fun to listen to. Fly Life Co podcast. I've listened to a little bit of that. That's quadcopters. And that's more of the professional end of it. And while there's a little bit of drone racing, they kind of do that too. But he talks a lot about the industry of using quads to be able to do filmography. So that's a different aspect of that. And if you're interested in it, that's one place to go. Let's see, Park Flyer podcast. I had heard about it and I've actually been having an eyeball. I'm like, I should probably listen to that. So I finally started listening to it about a couple weeks ago. Just after we had Terry Dunn, I think he mentioned Park Flyer podcast. I'm like, yeah, I should probably listen to that. And I started listening to it. They're great. If you're new, they cover all sorts of great topics that you'll want to know about too. If you don't like the way we do it, or you want to hear another person go about the same topic, look it up. They've probably got it and listen, because they've got a great chemistry and I don't think you'll be disappointed. And if I recall right, they're family safe.
Okay.
And then I have a WTFF. 3D printing is, to me, it's an integral piece of the hobby, and that there's so many things you can do with 3D printing in the hobby that most people, I'd say about 50% of the people that I've met on the forums, they have a 3D printer or have access to one. So WTFF, that's it's what I want to. I think it's what the heck about fused filaments and fused filament fabrication. That's what it is. And basically, these are a husband and a wife who do designs for 3D printing. They actually work in the manufacturing industry and they create three-dimensional models, and they use that. And 3D printing is obviously one of their things. That's kind of like their private business. But they also send stuff out to like CNC mills and things like that for manufacturing. Like, how do you build a mold? Like, how do you mass produce this? And one of the newer technologies is 3D printing. So they're using it more on an industrial kind of slant, but they go into a lot of great details and bring up a lot of interesting subjects about 3D printing. So and I know that I'm sure there's a ton of podcasts on 3D printing, but these guys, I thought, when I listen to them, they're family friendly. So you can listen to them in the car, even if you have your kids with you or something. And, they're covering a topic I want to know more about, right? Like I don't spend forever doing 3D printing, but when I do, I enjoy understanding why things aren't going the way they should or how to make it better. And that's kind of what that podcast talks about.
All right.
And I think, let's see, we got two more. One I think I talked about last time. It's not directly RC related, but it is related in that as you get into designing airplanes for yourself to fly at the field, this guy might have some topics you might want to hear more about. Aerospace Engineering Podcast. He's a fellow professor at a university in England, and he brings on people who make planes for a living. And they're sending stuff into space. They're either making rockets or they're making planes, and they're breaking new ground. And he talks to them about what they're doing. And so either whether they're using new composites, one guy that he was talking to about the composites and how they use the stranded fibers and the directional lay and the different methods of I guess curing to make rotor blades, because they are very unique in how the stresses that they see and how they need to perform.
I suppose I can see that, yeah.
So he had them talking. We talked about the friction welding.
Yeah.
And he had a whole thing on that. He also had the guys who design the SR-71 blades, or that kind of single crystalline, the monocrystalline metal cooling technology. And he had them talk about how that happens, why they do what they do, and some of the new technologies that are making that happen faster or better, and how they're coupling it with things like the friction welding to essentially almost make the fins and the center core effectively one piece. Not just one piece, but like there's very few defects from tip of the rotor all the way to the center.
Right.
Which is really hard to do when you have, 40 parts you're fusing together. So it goes into the weeds. I mean, the kind of weeds I like. So if you're on that mind, you want to know more about technical stuff, like, and I'll call it the things that might be fringe on the hobby, where if you're building a fiberglass model, if you're building a carbon fiber infused composite, they go into that. If you want to know more about new metals, like there's a new material that's half as light as, I think it's HX5, made by a company called, I think, Aerobile. And it's 90% as strong as aluminum. So it's almost as strong as aluminum, has almost, it performs better thermally than most metals. And it is 50% as heavy. So it is what's making the 6th gen fighters and the 5th gen fighters possible.
Right.
Which is it's a material that you can mold and injection and CNC router. I mean, it's as versatile as aluminum, but it's lighter. So pretty wild. I was just like, what? And I can't get enough of this stuff. He needs to put out more. I'm about to run out. And then I think last but not least, All Things That Fly podcast. I haven't listened to it, but I know it's out there. And I know that it's, if you're looking for, if this isn't enough and you need more, you can look for that. Because that's probably yet another source of people who talk about RC the hobby in some way. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, or maybe that's the one that tickles somebody's fancy.
Exactly. So there you go. That is what we listen to.
Or would also like to listen to if we had more time.
Yeah, definitely that.
Yours is a lot longer than I expected it to be.
I spend some time rolling around in the car. I used to have a 2-hour commute, 1 hour each way. So I knew I could bust through stuff. And sometimes I'll listen, like if I know I'm going to be doing certain tasks at work, I'll throw on headphones and listen to, 3-4 hours of podcast stuff. So, some of these like RC stuff, their episodes tend to be like half hour, so you can go through a bunch of those, like Free For All RC, that's 2 to 3 hours. The flight test community cast was always about an hour. Some of these tend to be 45 minutes to an hour. Like the WTFFFF is anywhere between a half hour and 45 minutes. So some of them go a lot quicker.
Okay. Well, we want to talk about our workbench for a few minutes before we work on getting out of here?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Well, assuming all goes well with gluing the wing on the Sea Duck, I'll probably want to see about doing some, I don't know. I may reinforce that glue bit, but part of the reason I'm doing the foam tack is I'm hoping that it will be glued back in as strong as the foam that was originally there.
Yeah.
It is the hope. And if that proves true, then I could just move straight on to pushing the giant dent in the nose of the plane, that push back out, and work on waterproofing the fuselage again, and then change props, and I should be able to get it back in the air.
Yeah, definitely. I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to seeing that.
I mean, I'm looking forward to flying it again for more than 15, 20 seconds.
Yeah, next time, don't fly near trees. I think it'll help.
Yeah, I'm not sure where I want to take it to fly next time. I'll have to find somewhere.
Well, if it helps, it takes off the ground as easy as it takes off the water. Actually, not as easy, but it takes off just as well off of the ground as it does the water. So, it's so if you have a better spot that doesn't have water, don't worry about it too much.
Okay.
So I'm going to finish up the quickie and give that a maiden. I'm going to go to the Bandito and get that done. See if I can get that back in the air. Let's see. Oh, I've got a couple. I've got a Dick Dastardly plane forum post that I put up. And if you remember, Dick Dastardly had like a bunch of air races or whatever. Like they had to catch a pigeon or something. It's way back in the day. I don't know. It's just one of those like, what do we do now? I don't know. Let's put them in the air. So, of course, there are a bunch of these wacky, nutty, like impossible planes where like it's a bi-wing strapped to the top of a regular kind of wing, but the tail's all crooked and there's like parapets that each of the different characters, and that's where, Muttley and the wheezy laugh kind of, I don't know. It's just something from my childhood. And I'm not alone, apparently, because when I posted, there's a bunch of, oh my gosh, I remember all that. So I put together some quick plans just to see if I could, something that looks very similar to that Star Voyager flying boat thing, except it's a Dick Dastardly plane with all the different characters. I'm trying to remember how that. Anyway, so I'll probably be putting that and the P-61 together.
Okay.
And then, all those things that I repaired, I'll probably here and there put up in the air if I can. And then the Prendlety video, I'm going to finish up and get online so other people can start building it.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a couple people looking forward to that.
There are. Yeah. There's a couple people that look like they're going to make it. I'm just eager to see if the process that I outline is as repeatable as I think it is. Because it is a different build method. To get that 10-degree twist is not the simplest.
No, I imagine not.
Yep.
Well, when it comes out, send me a link and I'll look at it.
Heck yeah. It's only 2 sheets.
There you go. I mean, I didn't say I'd build one. I said I'd look at the video.
Whoa. No, you're going to build one. You got to build one.
No. I'm not building a plane I got.
I'd like you to build one.
Okay. When, I finish up the 7 and get the Corsair fixed up. Again, and the Duck and the 2 Spitfires and the wing. And
so that's on your workbench next week then, huh?
Yeah, sure.
No, it's you're right. No, I want you to build the 7.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know you're going to enjoy it. It'll probably spur me to build my other 7 that I have sitting there.
Yeah.
All right. Well, cool. Anything else?
I think that was it. I think you were wanting to close us out tonight.
Well, I was, but I don't see any notes on how to do it. So I don't think I'm.
Well, there were no notes.
What do you mean there were? I know, but there used to be.
There hadn't been notes on how we close this thing out in a while.
Okay, well, how about this? If you want to reach out to us or see what we're doing or listen to some episodes, you can reach us at www.aviationrcnoob.com. Aviation Noob Podcast? aviationrcnoob.com.
Yeah, we have a contact us form over there.
Yeah, it's contact, and it works, as we've figured out. You could also reach out to Joe individually at joe@aviationrcnoob.com, or you can reach out to me, Matthew, at aviationrcnoob.com. You could also just reach out aviationrcnoob@gmail.com, and it'll get to both of us. You can also drop us a line or write us a review on what is that? Apple Podcasts. Give us a 5-star review. Get other people to find us. So that's how other people find us when they're looking at aggregators. They see 5 stars, like that might be worth listening to. And they see those great reviews we read earlier, and they're like, "Oh, this is definitely something I need to listen to." So help us have others see us. And I think that's all I can remember.
All right, I'll take it from here then. Guys, as always, thank you for tuning in and listening. We appreciate you being here, as always. Hopefully you've enjoyed the conversations as much as we've enjoyed having them. As Matthew said, feel free to reach out to us via the emails, but also feel free to pop into the Discord server if you have not yet. We'll have a link to that in the show notes below. And Matthew, you did do a pretty good job of covering all that. So
Nice.
That's it. We're going to get out of here. Guys, we'll catch y'all next time.
All right. Catch you next time.
You didn't do too bad.
No, I didn't. But I
Just
was like,
awkward as all.
I'm sort of like, okay, wait, okay, the website and emails. Yeah, we got like 6 of those.
Yeah, like I don't plug the website.
Well, I figured we should every once in a while.
That's fine. All right, you ready to end it?
Yeah, let's do it.
Ending.
It didn't record.